born in Bethlehem in Judea during the time of King Herod, Magi from the east came to Jerusalem and asked, "Where is the one who has been born King of the Jews? We saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." When King Herod heard this, he was disturbed, and all Jerusalem with him. When he had called together all the people's chief priests and teachers of the law, he asked them, "Where is the Christ to be born?" "In Bethlehem in Judea," they replied. "For this is what the prophet has written, but you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For out of you will come a ruler who will be shepherd of my people Israel." Then Herod called the Magi secretly and found out from them the exact time the star had appeared. He sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go and make a careful search for the child. As soon as you have found him, come report to me so that I may go and worship him." After they had heard the king, they went on their way, and the star they had seen in the east went ahead of them until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were overjoyed. On coming to the house, they saw the child with his mother, Mary, and they bowed down and worshipped him. Then they opened their treasures, and presented him with gifts of gold and of incense and of myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to go back to Herod, they returned to their country by another route. Where I work, I have to go to Google to clock in and out. I go to Google and then it sends me to the site. Well, every time I open Google, it sends up ads of different things, stories for me to read. And the one that popped up first yesterday said, "Star of Bethlehem, to be seen for the first time in 800 years. And there have always been people that have tried to figure out what was the Star of Bethlehem. What caused it? And as you read the article, it's written by astronomers who believe that the Star of Bethlehem was a conjunction of planets. And what this means is that the planets in the sky that you can see, every so often, every few hundred years or so, two of them will appear almost at the same place in the sky. And so you get two shining objects that combine, and it looks from our viewpoint like they've become one. And it looks like a star that has gotten brighter, almost a new star. So that's what they think, or at least what this group of astronomers think was the Star of Bethlehem. They were guessing. We don't know. Other thoughts that have been used from time to time, some obviously wrong and some not necessarily. One is that it was a comet. The problem with thinking the Star of Bethlehem was a comet is that everybody in the ancient world knew what comets were. And they were always seen as signs of trouble. Comets always foretold doom. Something bad's going to happen. So it seems a strange choice for it to have been a comet. The other possibility, or another one at least, is that it was a supernova. It was a star that was too faint to be seen by human eyes, but it went supernova and it expanded and got brighter for a brief period of time. Now again, I don't know if this is what happened, but I like this idea. Because for a star to have been too faint for us to see with the naked eye, it would have to be billions of miles away. And the lifetime of stars are measured in hundreds of millions of years. So this star would have had to have been shining, too faint for us to see, for probably billions of years before it went supernova. And it would have had to gone supernova long before the wise men saw it. Because if it happened at the exact time that Jesus was born, they wouldn't notice it until maybe millions of years later. Whatever caused the Star of Bethlehem, whatever the phenomena, the scientific phenomena that led to it, God put that process in place at the dawn of creation. When I was younger, I had this view of reading the Bible that Jesus was almost like God's plan B, or maybe even plan C or D, that he made Adam and Eve and they messed up. So he kicked them out of the garden, that was plan B. And then their descendants messed up and he sent the flood, but he saved Noah, and that was another plan. That didn't work, so he sent Abraham. He went to Abraham. That didn't work, so he sent Moses and he sent the law. But people couldn't follow the law, so then he sent Jesus. Which almost like God's going, well, I've tried everything else, I want to try Jesus. I mean, how do you like to be told, we want you for this job? Well, thank you. Yeah, you're our fifth choice. Everybody else we've tried hasn't worked out, but we finally got around to you, and hopefully you'll be better than they were. I mean, this is Jesus we're talking about. There's no way Jesus was down on the bottom of the list of candidates on the resumes. Yeah, we'll try Moses. No, that didn't work. Okay, I guess we'll give Jesus a shot. Makes no sense. What does make sense is that everything before Jesus was preparing the way for Jesus. Jesus could not be sent to a people who did not know God, who did not have the law, who did not have a covenant with God, who did not have some understanding of God's love and God's providence. So all of the things that led up to Christmas, all of the things that came before Christmas, every way that God interacted with his people before he sent Jesus was to prepare things and to prepare us to receive Christ. I remember going to college and sitting down with my academic advisor. And we picked out my major, and I'm looking at classes I want to take, and I go, I want to take this class. And he goes, well, you can't take that class yet. In order to take that class, you have to take this class. It's a prerequisite. They won't let you take that class until you've had this class. they want you to know this stuff before you show up for that class. Adam and Eve, Abraham, Moses, Noah. These are all prerequisites for Christ. The prophets, the good kings, the bad kings, the history of God's interaction with his chosen people, all points to Christ. John recognized that in his gospel when, unlike Luke and Matthew, he doesn't start with the birth of Jesus. John starts his gospel in the beginning. Christ was always God's plan. Christ knew when he created us that we would need Christ. And when you think about it, it makes sense. When God put Adam and Eve in the garden and put the tree of knowledge of good and evil in there, he had to know they were going to eat from it. He may not know when or the exact specifications, but he knew that they were eventually going to eat from that tree. It would be like if you had made cookies and you put them in the cookie jar and you left the cookie jar on the kitchen table. You know the grandkids are going to get into that cookie jar at some point. If you don't want them in it, you stick it on top of the fridge where they got to at least work at it. My grandma was sneaky. She always put the empty cookie jar on top of the fridge and hid the one that had the cookies in it. God knew that Adam and Eve were going to eat from the tree. When God gave Moses the law, he knew that the children of Israel would not be able to live entirely by the law. That wasn't the purpose of it. But he also knew that without the law, we would not understand Christ. Without having experienced God's love and mercy, we would not be able to accept the love and mercy that Christ came to offer. To me, the Star of Bethlehem is one of the most powerful symbols of the birth of Christ. The other thing, and I didn't realize this until recently, and I've read this story and heard this story since I was a child. Most people didn't recognize the star for what it was. And we know this because when the Magi show up at Herod's palace and say, "We have seen the star of the child who was born King of the Jews," they're like, "We didn't see that." They're disturbed. Not everyone who saw the new star recognized it for what it was, understood what it meant. Only certain people did. And they were people who you might not have expected to care about what was going on in a small kingdom hundreds of miles away from them. God's signs are not recognized by everyone. Many times they're not known until much later that that was the sign. Whatever scientific process we can attribute it to. It was put in place at the beginning of creation to be seen at just the right time by people who understood it. Christ was not God's backup plan. It was what he planned from the very beginning. Our closing hymn is Hark the Herald Angels Sing, number 277.